It's been a long time coming, but I finally got my Brompton electric, and I've had a month to get to know it. I picked it up from Brompton Junction in Covent Garden and took it back there for the 100-mile checkover. While there, they took the opportunity to apply the latest firmware upgrade, which seems to have made the motor spread of power a little wider. I'm a long-time Brompton user, and I'm going to assume that anyone interested in this will understand the basis of the Brompton Fold, which makes it unique in that it shrinks the bike to the size of a small suitcase and puts the chain on the inside so the user doesn't get grease on his or her clothes. It's essentially an urban bike, everyday practical transport for practical people, and ideally suited to an electric version, the idea being that injecting a bit of juice into the bike leaves the hills and headwinds less burdensome and thus the rider less sweaty. Brompton say they wanted their electric bike to be as close to the non-electric models as possible. That's not easy when you consider the fold of the bike hardly lends itself to running electric cables tidily. The small and narrow wheels don't really lend themselves to the insertion of a powerful electric motor, and there's nowhere on the frame to hang the big battery needed for a long-powered range. For those who don't know electric bikes, I should point out there is no throttle, so the bike won't run under electric power only. It adds power commensurate to the effort you are putting in. When you work hard, the motor takes a lot of the load. If you dawdle, the motor backs off. Regardless, by law the electric power cuts off at 25 km per hour, 15.5 miles an hour. In every respect, the electric Brompton is legally a bicycle and subject to the same laws and rules. In principle, an electric Brompton is the perfect commuter in urban transport. Is it though? Let's take a look. My bike has the black paint job, there's a white option too. The only obvious difference between an E and a non-E model is the big black hub in the front wheel. There are other giveaways in the extra cabling for the electrics, and the larger bag bracket with contacts for the battery, but they would only be noticeable from a close look by another Brompton owner. I added some options to my bike, the built-in lights, the 6 gears, 3 hub and 2 derailleur, and the larger bag. One thing that anyone buying an electric Brompton will notice is the price. Mine came in at £2,800. Ouch. But a bike developed for maximum efficiency and lightness, incorporating Williams Formula One engineering expertise, and developed over the course of several years, could never be cheap. That wad of money buys you a Brompton, not fitted with electric propulsion, but integrated into it, plus many strengthened and altered parts. While we're on the downsides, when you fold the bike and pick it up, there's no question it is heavier. However, as someone with previous experience of a non-Brompton, non-folding electric bike, not as much heavier as I expected. It's only when picking up the folded bike that you notice it. Wheeled when folded, or slung, unfolded and balanced on the shoulder, the extra weight doesn't make much impression. On the shoulder though, you'll want to take the bag and battery off for balance reasons. You'll find yourself carrying it folded as little as you can. In use, the integrated nature of the design becomes obvious. The battery bag comes on and off smoothly, connecting to the bike's electric contacts via a clever, articulated protective cover for when you use the bike without the battery. The battery lifts out of the bag for charging, or swapping from the small to the large bag if you have it. It takes around 5 hours to charge from right down to full, but in reality most people will charge it long before it is at minimum, and from 3 lights to full is a couple of hours. Being a full-on kind of person, I run the bike on full power all the time. My usual use is a mile to my local station, a couple of miles from Waterloo and return, so around 6 or 7 miles per trip. I reckon it would go about 5 days per charge at that rate, but in practice I charge it after a couple of days, when 3 or 4 indicator lights are showing. You get more on low or mid-power of course, but 25 miles or so is plenty of range for a commuter machine, and it keeps the battery size and weight down. If I cycled all the way on my trip, it would be about 12 miles each way, so a charge every night would be just about right. In practice, the battery size and weight to range compromise is well judged for its intended purpose. If your backside would take a 25-mile each way commute, you could keep another battery on charge in the office, and just swap them each day. Electrics aside, everything else on the bike, the fold, gears, etc., work exactly as the non-e-bike, so there's nothing to report there. The performance on the road is better than I expected. Here I am going up the steepest part of Broomfield Hill in Richmond Park in southwest London. It's about 1 kilometre long with a maximum gradient of 16.9%, or 1 in 6. As you can see, the Brompton takes it in its stride. Many people much younger than me finish up walking this stretch. It requires effort, but I'm not sweating when I reach the top. I could happily ride down and climb it again. What that means to me is that the bike will handle any likely urban incline comfortably, whatever your age or leg strength. In town situations, the electric bike has a big safety advantage at its fast step off from traffic lights. No more getting forced into the curb by cars. The Brompton accelerates startlingly fast in first gear, and a swift snick into second maintains it long enough to put you 5 metres at least ahead of the other traffic. It more or less eliminates the danger of left-turning vehicles at lights, and drivers who didn't see you, mate. In normal riding with that electrically induced tailwind behind you, it just makes town riding a pleasure. As with all electric bikes, the assistance shuts off abruptly at 25 kilometers per hour, and that takes a little getting used to. That doesn't stop you riding faster, you just do it without electrical assistance. As you can see here, the front wheel turns as easily on the e-bike as on the non-e one. That hasn't been my experience with other hub motor electric bikes, where the magnetic drag has been only too obvious. There can be a bit of hunting in higher gears, with a low swooshing sound rising and falling when the bike is on the cusp of feeding in the power or not. Summing up, my overall impression is that the electric Brompton is exactly what I wanted. Like its non-e siblings, the e-bike is built to do a job, and that gives it a classic lean stylishness that a design-led project rarely attains. The biggest compliment I can pay it is that with power off it rides just like an ordinary Brompton. I've always thought that electric bikes are the best vehicle for electrical power, because unlike an electric car or motorcycle with a dead battery, you can still get home, but with a Brommy that's true in spades. Riding an electric bike is a technique in itself, and until you learn how to master the power output, it can seem underwhelming. That's because your input dictates the power assistance. It can be counterintuitive at times. For example, on a hill, you'll often need to engage a higher gear rather than the expected lower one to get more boost. You're pushing harder in second than you would be in first, so the bike ups the output. The hunting I mentioned previously can be alleviated by pedalling a tad harder or softer. Experience sorts it out though, leaving you with a bike that lets you take as much or little of the strain as you like. Nice touches are a USB port on the battery, so your phone can be charged 24/7, meaning you can zombie ride without limit. And the lights have an auto on-off setting, plus switch off when you fold the bike. The electric cabling must have been a nightmare to sort out on a bike that double folds, but it is all very tidily executed. So, how to sum it up? Firstly, there are cheaper ways of getting a Brompton electrified. By their nature, they can't be as integrated and warranted. Costing a lot is not the same as being expensive. The electric Brompton is unmistakably the real McCoy. It could have been a Mark I first effort, awaiting rider feedback for Mark II, but it isn't. It has arrived fully developed, and it feels like it has been around for years. In a way, it has been around for several years, just not on sale. I may sound like a fanboy, but I'm not. Brand loyalty isn't on my radar. I buy Brompton for entirely practical reasons, and if someone built something more fit for my purpose, I'd buy one. I just did. It looks like a Brompton, rides like a Brompton, and folds like a Brompton. It is a Brompton, just minus the sweat. Thanks for watching.